And the disciples decided to focus on something else which could go unnoticed, which happens to fall this Shabbos. So it's not usually on Shabbos, but this year being a bit different, like you had Purim on Friday, Erev Pesach on Friday. So Chamisha Osa B'Av, the 15th day of Av, also falls this Shabbos. So this Shabbos is really loaded with a lot of good things as a comfort after Tisha B'Av. And here is one which may be of some interest when we begin to analyze it. Rabbi Chanovitz, can I ask you, can one show the people who are with us now online, can one show them this sheet? Mainly it's just the diagram, the circle.
Everybody see the diagram?
Okay, so the reason why this diagram was made in the first place is because if you look at the year just superficially, it would appear as though the various Yomim Tovim, the various highlights, are randomly placed, and there's certainly no symmetry or no given order to it until you examine and study this sheet, and you discover very quickly that every month has a month corresponding to it exactly 6 months away. And I mentioned already now that Chamisha Osa B'Shvat, which they call on another similar sheet, not the one you can see, midway change. What you see there is for Av, you've got Tisha B'Av, and a few days later, Tu B'Av, which is the right bang, the middle of the month, corresponds to Tu B'Shvat. Can you see? Opposite it, the other end of the year, is another minor Yontif, there we call it, Tu B'Shvat, 15th of Shvat, 15th of Av. Exactly 6 months between one and the other. Now let's show you some of the symmetry. Can you see Adar and Nisan? Yeah? Then look at Elul and Tishri. Adar is a month, a very joyous month. It's also preparation for Nisan. Adar, if anything, is tshuva out of love, because we were so overjoyed with the miracle of Adar, gets us in the mood for the Yontif of Pesach and the Chodesh of Nisan, which is most definitely a very upbeat month. But before that, you had Tu B'Shvat. And Tu B'Shvat is exactly the middle. So it's 15 days till the end of Shvat, another 30 days of Adar. That would give you a total of 45 days till Rosh Hashanah. Now there's more to it than that, because we will soon examine Rosh Hashanah and we will discover that Rosh Hashanah is not actually the day of the creation of the world. Yeah.
What day was the world created?
I'm sorry?
What day was the world created?
What?
Day was the world created?
Oh, the 25th of Elul. 25th of Elul is the creation of the world, whereas Rosh Hashanah, which we say, Zeh HaYom Tchilas Ma'asecha, this is the beginning of your works, is the day of the creation of Adam and Chava, which is so important that that's the day we celebrate, and you'll never find anybody making a very big deal out of the 25th of Elul.
It's like a birthday.
Which is, in a way, the birthday of the world. But the birthday of the world is nowhere near as important to us as the creation of Adam and Chava and the start of the human race, the start of, as is explained in Sforim, of the one creation that is expected to discover Hashem, his and herself. Because there are plenty of items in creation which cannot recognize Hashem, whether you're talking to in terms of the inanimate or vegetation, or the world of the Balei Chayim, the various other living creatures, but they don't have the intelligence to do that. But we do. So if you look at the circle in front of you there, you will see that you have Tisha B'Av, then Tu B'Av, right? Top right. And then you have the opposite that is Tu B'Shvat. Now, the Bnei Yisoscha is a famous Chassidish classic in the middle period between the Baal Shem Tov and more recent times. He discusses the significance of these two dates. Now, in the Gemara, we find two opinions as to when exactly the world was created. There's one opinion the world was created in Nisan. There's another opinion the world was created in Tishri. So either way, we have two beginnings of our year. That means we have a beginning on Rosh Hashanah, obviously, which we celebrate in its special way. And we have another beginning, Rosh Chodesh Nisan, which is the chief Rosh Chodesh of the year. Although Pesach is the major Yontif, but Rosh Chodesh Nisan is the king of the Rosh Chodoshim, of the new moons. Okay, so what happens is this. 40 days before the day of the creation of the universe, as opposed to the creation of Adam and Chava, you have either Tu B'Shvat, that's if you understand, as the opinion in the Gemara, that the world was created in Nisan, or you have it on Tu B'Av, which is this coming Shabbos, if you understand, as we normally do, that the world was created on Chof Hei Elul. It's 40 days before. The Gemara says, Arboim Yoim, 40 days, Koidem Yetziras Havlad, before, how the best word for Vlad, Rabbi Chanowitz, would be, is created within the mother.
Embryo.
Probably, embryo, yeah. So 40 days in advance, so there's a baskor, a heavenly voice already announces that this will be the zivug for this baby to be born eventually. So the idea being that the day, which is 40 days before the creation of the world, is a day of significance. And on the other sheet that I have here, maybe Rabbi Chanowitz, you want to show this for a moment, it's called midway change. That means, if you like to show whoever's with us, midway change means it's the point, if you can pinpoint it, of a change in the seasons. So you will notice, as from this Shabbos, only by minutes the days will get shorter. And depending where you are situated on the globe, the days will get a bit cooler. I'm not saying in New York, not necessarily the case at all, but generally speaking, the trend is almost already a trend towards the fall season. Whereas, if you're talking in terms of Tu B'Shvat, where we could definitely still have snow and ice, and plenty of it, the days are beginning to get longer, and in a sense, there should be not just more daylight, but more sunlight and a drop more warmth. It's not always noticeable. But what you will see, even in this part of the world, is the buds. You will notice the buds on the trees. So let's take a little tour of the months and let us discover how there definitely is symmetry throughout the year. And there is a pattern to everything. You know, in Torah, there's nothing that's haphazard. Everything is precise. Everything is true. Everything is accurate. So let's start with Nisan. Okay, so Nisan has a major Yontif, Pesach. Because of that, throughout the month of Nisan, we celebrate in a sense. And there is no Tachanun. And although it's not more than one Yontif, that Yontif is major enough to give the character to the entire month. If you look at Tishri, exactly 6 months away, and by the way, if I can borrow Rabbi Chanowitz, when you're ready, I'll borrow that sheet back. You may wish to show them the other one. So there is also what we call equinox, which is that the day and night are equal. At the moment, you have about, shall we say, close to 18 hours of daylight and only 6 hours of darkness. When you get to Nisan and Tishri, you get roughly 12 hours of each. In the Gemara, we get the concept of Shos Zemanias. That means seasonal hours. The seasonal hour in the winter is very short, the 12th of daylight. The seasonal hour in the summer is very long. It's also the 12th of daylight. When you get to the point of the, what they call, again, equinox, equal day and night. Okay, so that's around Nisan and Tishri, which, as we said, are the two beginnings as far as we're concerned. Now, on the sheet that you can see, it won't be shown, but it was on the other one, that this is the new year of Chesed in Nisan. It's a new beginning of the year, a new start, but the mood is one of Chesed, as is echoed in Shir Hashirim, which we say when? On Pesach. So don't get me wrong when I say it's a love song between Hashem and his beloved people. And therefore it's Chesed, an overflow of Chesed, of love and kindness. When it comes to Tishri, it's a different mood. It's a much more serious mood. It's a new year of Din. It's Yom HaDin, it's called Day of Judgment. It's when we need to take stock of the outgoing year. Whereas in Nisan, what we do, we prepare for the forthcoming year and try to get into gear for that. Note now that there is no Yontif, neither in Iyar nor in Cheshvan. And you see that? And they're also 6 months away from each other. Why is that? The inspiration of Nisan is so real, it ought to last us another month. So we don't need a Yom Tov. I know, yes, there's Pesach Sheni and there's Lag BaOmer, which tragically this year became a bit of a sad day, but it won't be like that anymore in Yirtzeh Hashem. But the point is, a Yom Tov as such, a Yom Tov from the Torah, we do not have and we do not need. And why? Because we can glean plenty from Nisan, and likewise, we glean in Cheshvan inspiration from Tishri. Now, Tishri has much more Yom Tov. Rosh Hashanah, Aseret Yemei Tshuva, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, Chol HaMoed, Shmini Atzeres, Simchas Torah. Wow. All that is packed into the month of Tishri. So not surprising that Cheshvan has no Yom Tov. So on the other sheet, you may just have noticed, unless Rabbi Chanan want to show it again, there's a blank for Cheshvan in this one. The blank for Cheshvan, and there's a blank also for Iyar, that there is no Yom Tov. Officially, there's no Yom Tov. Okay, let's move on. Now, what is opposite Sivan? We look at Sivan in the summertime. You've got opposite that, you have Kislev. So in Sivan, towards the beginning of the month, comes Shavuos, great Yom Tov. The Yom Tov which really gave us our character, definitive Yom Tov. Yom Tov Shavuos, the Torah, that defines us. Then you have the Yom Tov of Chanukah, which is in the end of Kislev. It also defines us. Why? Because our spiritual existence, our loyalty to the Torah was threatened. But Hashem saved us there too. So there is a corresponding date, Sivan and Kislev. Sivan, we received the Torah. Kislev, we really went all the way to save the Torah, to maintain it, and not to lose our spiritual goals. Okay, so now we're getting towards midsummer and midwinter. If you look at the line that goes across right to left, or maybe you want to say left to right, there's also a line which you could complete going from top to bottom. So there we find midsummer going down to midwinter. So think in terms of the climate in this part of the world, the northern hemisphere, not like Australia, New Zealand. So Shavuos, Sivan, is certainly when things heat up, and it leads you into Tammuz. And Tammuz has the beginning of the 3 weeks, which we just emerged from. And Tammuz have Shiva Osa Tammuz, the 17th, which is certainly not a happy day, and launches the 3 weeks. Look at the opposite number in Teves, the 10th of Teves, Asura B'Teves. What is fascinating is that extremes are not good. So extremes in temperature even are hard to handle. Look how much one has to drink in this kind of weather at the moment. And one has to be careful not to become dehydrated. So Tammuz, and in fact the beginning of Av, for us are a challenging time, a difficult time. And what is the reason for that? The reason is because with the extremes in climate come other kinds of extremes, and our enemies have had a go at us. And so too, Teves, it might just be the one day of Asura B'Teves, actually it's 3 days in Teves that are challenging days. So it shows us that that is where you are midsummer or corresponding midwinter, and therefore things can be somewhat difficult. So you'll see on some of the sheets it says for summer, it says high summer, and for winter, deep winter. See, because you've got 4 seasons, but in the summer itself, you can say the height of summer, in winter, the depth of winter. Okay, so these times are the more difficult times, as opposed to times when the climate is in moderation. That is when events tend to be a bit more moderate, and that's when we didn't have such great struggles. Now this leads us already to what we spoke about, Tu B'Shvat and Tu B'Av. Bang in the middle of Shvat, and Shvat is opposite Av, 6 months away, and we said that they are the times when actually the turning point begins. It's the earliest time that you could pinpoint as beginning the upbeat season at Tu B'Shvat and beginning the fall season, which moves in the other direction at Tu B'Av, at Chamish Osabar, 15th of Av, which as said is this Shabbos. So I'd like to share with you a couple of lines of the Gemara at the very, very end of Masechtas Tanis, because there we are told something quite fascinating. The Gemara brings the Mishnah first, Lahoya Yomim Toivim, Li Yisroel Kachamisha Osabar. There are no Yomim Toivim for us. Now, to some, it's a non-starter, the 15th of Av. But to others, it's a day to celebrate. We certainly don't say Tachanun, and I don't know that any Rebbes hold a Tish, but for sure it's a day when we should put in something extra to mark the occasion. So the amazing thing is that Mishnah says, that they're compared. Now you would have thought, okay, Yom Kippur is the holiest day of the year, without question. But Chamish Osa B'Av, how many people as much as realize it's a special date for us? And yet those two are compared. And the Gemara says, Yom Kippur, okay, it's the day Hashem forgave us, and therefore it's a day which has the potential for forgiveness every single year. But what is the significance of Chamish Osa B'Av? So interestingly, there's a list of things the Gemara brings that occurred on Chamish Osa B'Av. A lot of them are to do with shidduchim, engagements. And the idea being, an engagement really stands for and reflects the wedding, the bond between Hashem and his people. So that bond between Hashem and his people begins to concretize when Chamish Osa B'Av. So therefore it is really a very special day, and the Gemara gives it almost a blat, not quite, almost a whole blat in Bava Basra, and again at the end of Tanis, to discover what really is so special about Chamish Osa B'Av. So this year it's on Shabbos, it's much easier. You're with the family or with your friends, and you'll be celebrating Shabbos Nachamu anyway, so why should we not add an extra lechayim or an extra tasty dish in honor of Chamish Osa B'Av? And perhaps see whether there's anything further that one can find, perhaps in English as well. I don't know where to find in English, but as I mentioned, the Bnei Yissaschar does definitely discuss it, and some other Chassidisches for him definitely do discuss it and talk about the significance of this date. So perhaps we can say that this year we're not just going to let it slip through our fingers, but we will make a point of Chamish Osa B'Av, and if we're with company, which hopefully will be, maybe mention it at the Shabbos table, that we should realize, although it is a Shabbos, if it would be in the middle of the week, we would certainly want to celebrate it and make it stand out as different from the other days of the year. What's very significant is that they're both to do with trees, because what happens on Chamisha Osa B'Av actually is that the wood is no longer dry enough from the sun to be usable for the Mizbeach. And therefore for the Mizbeach, for the altar of the Beis HaMikdash, that to make sure a supply of wood was cut beforehand. Tu B'Shvat, no need to elaborate, but that's to do with the trees. It's so interesting that we attach much significance to trees and to animals, and for sure to human beings. As Rabbi Yehuda Halevi puts it, there's not 4 categories. Rabbi Yehuda Halevi says there's 5. Doimen, inanimate; Tzemeach, vegetation; Chai, the animal kingdom; Medaber, human beings; and then number 5 is Yisroel. That's Rabbi Yehuda Halevi's Chiddush. But one way or another, hopefully there's some information here which is very valuable. One point was the symmetry of the year, that every month, most definitely now we can see, has a month corresponding to it, that there is such a thing as a midway change, which is coming up to B'Av and to B'Shvat likewise, and then that you can see that we have certain character traits connected with each month of the year. Once again, like Nisan is a rebirth, Iyar draws inspiration from the month before it, Sivan leads you into a high summer, Shavuos, and so on and so forth. So every month in its own way is special. That Sefer B'nai Yisachar is a Sefer which talks about Shabbos and then in depth on each month of the year. So there's a lot that we could say in connection with Chamish Osa B'Av, aside from Shabbos Nachamu, beginning the 7 Haftorahs of comfort, and the very extra special content of the Parsha this week. So I think there won't be a dull moment this week in this Shabbos, and hopefully we've got something major to look forward to. Rabbi Chanowitz, I hand over to you. You got your sheet? Are you okay without the glasses? You can read? Oh, okay. Even better.
So I actually have a question.
Yeah.
So each month of the year has different characters, right? So what about zodiacs and stuff like that? Everyone's always talking about zodiacs.
What about, sorry?
Zodiacs and different signs of the month and how it affects each person's
I'm not so
personality.
familiar, but the B'nai Yisachar does talk about these things. And also, each month has a pasuk, 4 words, which contain, as Rosh Tevas, the oisios, the letters of Hashem's name. And for Chodesh Av, Haskes U'Shema Yisrael Hayoim. And that's an amazing one for Av, which we would think is a negative month. It's a very, very positive pasuk. So I'm not so familiar, Chai, with what you mentioned there, but there definitely is a descriptive quote of 4 words relating to each month, which also the B'nai Yisachar talks about. And if you show me a siddur before I leave, I can show it to you. But not every single siddur, but a lot of siddurim give it to you for a Chodesh davening, or even for Shabbos for Chodesh davening.
Yeah, which one?
That one? Yeah, very likely in there. Thank you. I don't know whether Rabbi Chanowitz, you want to show it on the screen as well, but we can do that if you feel it's appropriate. Here. The only thing is it's got Shemus on it.
Okay.
But here's Av, and it says, Haskes Ishma Yisrael and Hayoim, it's into Hayoim Azeni Yesol Om. The believing, unbelievably upbeat pasuk there. Dafka for Chodesh Av. Quite remarkable. We're ideally meant to, or encouraged to, have that particular order of letters of Hashem's name when we conclude the bracha at the end of the middle bracha of the Amidah of Musaf for Rosh Chodesh. Okay, I'm going to shortly make my way, Rabbi Chanowitz, if I may do that. But this, I think, is an interesting topic.
Yeah, but it just to mention on a side note,
Yeah,
it says Ein Mazel Yisrael,
right.
which essentially is the zodiac, the mazolos.
Yeah, because what the Gemara means there in Shabbos is that we are governed by something much higher. The months might have their character, but ultimately, who determines our fate? Hashem, as opposed to the other nations. So the mazolos are not the last word. That's the problem.
It's interesting how, like Adar,
Yeah,
everybody has the
Dogim.
big signs that says Mazel Adar Dogim.
But that's a very positive one.
Right. I'm just saying,
Yeah.
Otherwise you have the zodiac. Like, where does one come to play with the other? You're saying Ein Mazel Yisrael.
I have to be honest, I've not looked into it in that depth ever, so I have to hand over to those who know.
Okay, we'd like to thank Rabbi Young for being here tonight, as always.
I think it's the 12th time we've done this.
I believe so. And Be'ezras Hashem, are you going to be here next week? As we take the week. Okay, Be'ezras Hashem will send out a WhatsApp to let everybody know whether or not the next week will be a program. My wife and I are going out of town. We'll see if we can get anybody to set it up and take care of it.
So you can let me know if you don't know.
Yeah. Also, I would like to say people should send out this information to their friends to get more people to join. It's 35 minutes of inspiration, of Torah learning, etc. And if you would like to sponsor an evening, please get in touch with me or Kaya. And we thank you for joining. Thanks. Have a good night.
Okay, Shkoyach. What I want to ask you, this Shabbos you won't be here then?
This Shabbos I will be here.
You will be here. So I should stop by Shabbos this time.